Vanakkam and welcome to the presentation about the legendary Chola through Kalki's writing, particularly in Ponniyin Selvan by our great Indra auntie. Indra Neelameggham is the first person to have translated this magnum opus into the English in the 1990s, albeit only 50% of the whole novel was completed at the time. As early as 1997, the chapters were published on the internet in the sequel novel Thodarkadai format arranged by Biga Ganesh. Since 2007, our English translation of Kalki's Ponniyin Selvan has been a part of Tamil literature archive called Project Madurai, enjoyed by over 1 lakh readers. Linguistic professor S. Rajendran has published an essay that English translation of historic novels should be modeled after Indra Neelamegham's techniques of preserving the cadence of original style of Kalki's writing. In 2022, Project Madurai requested and motivated her to the self-publish a translation called Ponniyin Beloved. They are available in Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, etc. Her books are in the Library of Congress, Library of Indology, Cologne, Germany, in the addition of county libraries. Today, we will hear Indra Mami talk about Kalki brought out Chola art and architecture through his Tamil epic Ponniyin Selvan. Let's welcome our great Indra auntie.
Dana, that was a nice introduction. Welcome. I think a couple of you have heard this talk of mine, which I presented in the Rose Wagner at one point. But though the slides may be similar, I'm going to change it a little. At that talk, I had an emphasis on music and song, which was because there are a lot of children learning the songs written by Kalki. This presentation, I'm going to focus on the history of the Cholas. One of the greatest empires which are unrecognized is the South Indian Empire of the Cholas. Cholas had an early period, and then these are the medieval Cholas. And why Kalki, why Indra, is the reason is Kalki started writing a little before the 50s, around the time of India's independence, around 1947. There were 3 great novels, and his speciality was he wrote in a very easy to understand Tamil. And then he also brought out the history of the local people who are now trying to shed the colonial mantle. And he wrote saying, you have history, you can recognize yourselves as great people, and that was the speciality. Now, Dana mentioned that I'm presenting this. Why me? What's so special? My native tongue, our home language was Tamil. I studied in English medium schools, but my language that I studied was Telugu, which is a language in a different state of India. But my father felt we need culture, so he taught us Tamil at home. So at that time I cried and I said, how many? I have to learn Hindi, I have to learn Tamil and English, of course. So then he said, reason I'm asking you to do this is you will read these novels and you'll see how fantastic they are. And so my inculcation into learning Tamil literature came by reading books like Ananda Vigadan, Kalki, Kumudam. And Kalki was one of the best. It's a periodical novel. I think it's still being published. And the novels of Kalki were published, serialized in those magazines. So that's how I learned Tamil. I remember when I got married, Neil told his father, who was an editor in Indian Express, she doesn't have any Tamil grammar, send her Tamil books for grammar. And then my father-in-law said, doesn't matter, she doesn't need grammar, she can still handle Tamil very well. But the first parcels I received were not saris and spices, but books on Tamil grammar, books on Tamil. So with that background, and in the early days, you know the immigrants have a trouble getting a job, you have a hiatus period before you can work or do anything. I started this as a fun project so that I can learn how to handle a word processor. It was not Microsoft Word, it was Word Perfect, which is a local company here in Utah. So to handle that, I started doing this work. I didn't have Google Translator, but a lot of lexicons which my father-in-law had sent, my family had sent. So when I did that, it was fun for me, and a few of the friends would read my writing every chapter and review it. One of the first persons is Elizabeth Ramdurai, a friend of the family. She spent time in editing it and said, we need to convert this not British English, but American English, so Americans can read. So there's a little variation. With all that background, let's start with our presentation. I'll give a lot of time for questions, and if anybody wants to stop me at any point, I would be glad to answer. Vijay is going to help me move these slides forward. This presentation is going to be more on the history, trade, enterprise, war, and then came music, art, and culture. So one of the greatest maritime powers the world has ever known, think pre-Vasco da Gama, think pre-Cook, think pre the discovery of the Americas. These guys, the Choras, the main thing was trade, and then selling of goods and buying of goods, and because of that, warfare. Warfare gave them peace within their own homeland, which helped them build the culture. This screen shows a few things about the Choras. The top is the tiger. Their flag was the tiger flag, which is still used by some Tamil peoples. Some of the Tamils from Sri Lanka still have the tiger flag. The flower there is called Avarampu in Tamil, which is a flame of the forest, and this was the symbolic or the flower of the Choras. And the interesting fact is the Tamil Nadu government still uses this as one of their symbols in their current day administration. The statue, what are the Choras famous for? Apart from their temples, the stonework, Chora bronzes are the greatest. It's in every museum in the world, and there's an elegance of stone casting. I remember going to one of the melting places when our Nataraja, which is in our temple, was being cast. What a fascinating the lost wax process. And one of the most difficult statues to cast is the Nataraja, because there's a balance involved in that, and if you have time, go look at Nataraja again. So, but the Choras perfected that art, and I met a gentleman from the aviation department of the government of India, and he said, if we know how to cast a Nataraja statue, we can cast very intricate aircraft parts. So that's why the Nataraja statue adorns many technical departments, including burn, including, of course, now I believe they made one for Delhi. With that, let's go into the next slide, and I'll talk about how Kalki awakened the sense of this history. Before we go into more history, this is a very intense, text-intense slide. The map shows southern India, and the gray area is the extent of the Chora Empire in about 1070, when Rajaraja was at his peak. After that, his son became more, but that was his empire at that day. That is his direct control, where every town's name was changed, every administration was set up by him. Let's start with the history, very, very brief. Kiradi is the modern day excavations, the name for an area in southern India, and that is comparable to the Harappa Mohenjo-daro excavations of the earliest cultural milieu of humankind. They have found pottery, they have found metal shards, and the excavation is still going on, so that's why Kiradi. And the history of that area is becoming more and more revealed as archaeology departments are working on it. So that's why from Kiradi to Kanchipuram near Chennai, modern day Madras, is a shore town with very, very ancient temples. Some of them are already immersed in the ocean because the ocean changes shoreline. But some of the most beautiful stonework and architecture is found in Mamalai or Mamallapuram, which is very close to Chennai. And Kanchi was the capital of the Pallavas, who ruled for a while. So that's why Kiradi to Kanchi and then to Tamil Nadu of present day. The earliest known history, the kings of this region were the Kalabiras or Kalabirar, as you say in Tamil. Not much is known about this, except probably their faith was more Buddhist and Jain, but they had something very, very special that they gave to Tamil culture. I mean, Tamil culture was there. Pre-Kalabira, there was Sangam, literature, poetry, but these people were actual rulers who ruled much of this land. They gave the three gems of the greatest gems of Tamil literature, Silappadigaram, Valayavadi, Kundalakesi, Malimegalai. They are called five gems of, these are non-religious texts. That's what even modern day scholars say. But I feel they had a religious overtone of Buddhism or Jainism. But they are exquisite works with a lot of poetry, a lot of description, as good as any epic or any literature you can find. So the Kalaparas gave the greatest gems of Tamil literature were written during their period. They ruled about 300 to 500 AD, and suddenly they vanished. Nobody knows what happens to them. They did not leave anything that could be researched as stone inscriptions or palm leaves. Maybe they did palm leaves. Their buildings were wooden, which were all gone as time changes. Next came the Pallavas of Kanchi. About them I've already talked. The greatest of these kings were, there was one Mahendravarman, Narasimhavarman, who were the architects or the rulers who propagated the carvings in Mamalai, which is a big World Heritage Site right now. The history of these people also was propagated, not propagated by exposed or revealed by Kalki's writings, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. When the Pallavas of Kanchi, one of the greatest battles, as big as the Battle of Waterloo or Panipat, was a battle of Vatapi, when Narasimhavarman captured Vatapi, or present-day Badami, which is on the borders of Maharashtra and Karnataka. And when he captured, he reduced that whole fantastic town of the Chalukyas to rubble for his purposes. And one thing that it gave, this war, was Ganesha came to the Tamil lands. In fact, those of you who know Carnatic music, one of the first lyrics that people who learn classical music is Vatapi Ganapatim Bhaje. I can see a few heads shaking. That is Vatapi. Vatapi was described by Narasimha Pallava, and they saw this beautiful statue of Ganesha, and his general Paranjoti said, "This is so beautiful." I mean, in spite of this destruction, he wanted to save some of the artwork and statuary, and he brought this Ganesha back to Tamil Nadu, and that was the Vatapi Ganapati. So now let's go beyond the Pallavas and the Choras. And you can see my legend saying later Choras. That's because there were Choras even before. Sangam literature talks of Chora kings, and then at one point they were, on the rise. Then they were subjugated by others. The Pallavas occupied the Chora territory. So they go up and down. But the medieval Choras, or the greatest Choras, their history starts around 648. Some say 748. And that's when they ruled for a very long time. That's when their maritime history, the war, the temple building, the cultural interchange, the trade between China and even Arabian Peninsula all happened. Very quickly, what about the Pandyas? I have many friends who say, what about Madurai? Yes, the Pandyas were great. They stuck to their town. They never ventured in war beyond their local territory. At the most, they came up to the Kaveri Delta, but not beyond. So though they were great kings, they had great trade enterprises, they were kind of living within the area of Madurai and northern Sri Lanka of present days. So they didn't go beyond the borders. Not many people of the ancient times went beyond the seas. So that's why even though the Pandyas were great, we don't talk too much about them. What happened to the Tamils? The Muslims, Malik Kafur, one of the greatest generals of the Muslim kingdoms. Those of you who saw the movie Padmavat, you can see that Malik Kafur in that. He was an invader who occupied the greatest empire in India, more than Harsha, more than Ashoka, more than Kanishka, more than the Choras. He conquered from all over, from Afghanistan till Madurai, and he destroyed. For some vengeance reason, he was a looter, that's what he did. So Malik Kafur came in about 1308 when he sacked Madurai and Tanjore, and that was the beginning of the Muslim enterprise in southern India. After him came the Nayakas. Now both the Kannadigas as well as Telugus claim the Nayakas as their kings. Krishnadevaraya was their greatest. And the Nayakas brought a system of administration, and a language to Tamil Nadu. At one point, Tamil was not the predominant language of Chennai and northern Tamil Nadu. It was Telugu. And even till recent times, till about the 60s, 70s, Telugu was the predominant language. You will see street names in Chennai and suburbs in Tanjore with the Telugu version of the names. But the Kannadigas, Telugus, we don't know, but Vijayanagara and Hampi excavations are lovely to behold. Whoever they were the greatest kings. They brought in a lot of administrative reform to these lands. Going on, they did one big thing. They divided up the land to be ruled by petty chieftains called Palaikarar. Their job was to administer justice, but pay taxes so that the king doesn't have to bother about administration. So there were 72 Palaikaras or chieftains in Tamil Nadu, similar to the zamindari system in northern India. And of course the colonials exploited that, making them fight with each other so they can rule and capture the trade there. So Palaikaras were there till very late 1700s, even 1800s. And some of the biggest families in Tamil Nadu, now you'll see the Palaikara names. And in English they are called polygons, but the Tamil word is Palaikara. Then the Europeans, the company rule and independence. And at the independence, the biggest movement was Dravidian consciousness, ethnic recognition of the local people, local language, and of course Tamil Nadu was renamed, and 1969 onwards it got its entity, the name of the land again acquired the name Tamil Nadu instead of Madras Presidency, which was a different story. Let's move on to the next slide, Vijay. Thank you so much. Here is the influence of the Choras. The purple was
They have a question.
Oh, sorry, you had a question, my dear?
Yeah. Vijayanagara Empire came before the Marathas.
Yes. Yeah. Marathas came later because they conquered the Mughals. I didn't want to go too much into history, that's a big talk again. Yeah, Vijayanagara, Marathas, and then the Muslims. Thank you. So the purple here is the direct rule of Rajaraja Chola. The green is their heartland, but they direct. And then the kind of orangish, pinkish thing is their trade influence, where they had extensive influence. The yellow is Rajaraja's son, Rajendra Chola's influence. You can see that they had influence. They didn't rule those lands, but they really commanded their economy. Think America and its influence on other countries. We do not rule UK or France, but the influence of the US in some ways, trade, philosophy, lifestyle, is so extensive. That's what the yellow is. And then you have the little blotches of blue, which is on some countries, that's their trade centers. So they have trade relations. How do we know that? There's archaeological, literary, and coin, numismatic evidence to show this is happening. What happened, why was this so powerful, is the naval power of the Cholas. Look at that boat, the ship. This is from a sculpture in Gangaikonda from one of the biggest, it's again a World Heritage Center. What's so special about the Chola ship was it was built of wood, treated wood which could withstand the salt water for months together. The other speciality of these ships, they reconstructed this recently. Some students of Madras University, Chennai University reconstructed. Their speciality was the boat deck was not a deck that was flat or sloping inwards. It sloped outwards with a central plane, so any amount of water or storm would drain away from the ship. And they also had the art of sealing the hatches with some kind of a tar-like material, so the water wouldn't go into the holes which stored the equipment or the armory. So that was a specialty, and it took a lot of effort for the students to reconstruct this in the 80s. So that was one specialty of the Showa ships. Even though it was in a storm, it did not get drowned by the water that went into the ship. The other thing was they depended on sails more than oarsmen. If you look at Mediterranean enterprises, oarsmen, the Romans used oarsmen to move their ships, but the Cholas depended more on the sails because they could handle the monsoon winds. So two differences between what the European Mediterranean ships and Cholas. The other one is, I don't know if this picture is clear enough, you can see the extended outboards. Modern day catamarans, kattumaram, that means there were wooden logs tied to the ship so the ship didn't topple. And if needed, these ships were able to pull the outrigger logs in so the ship could sail faster, but otherwise it would steady the ship. So this catamaran technology, which is nowadays it's used in catamaran, swift, fiberglass boats, it's still there. That's what the word catamaran means, catamaran tied to the boat. So there was this technology here. So any time in the world, technology is what conquers. So the Chola ships were special. That's why they had a naval power. They made the Bay of Bengal their lake. So let's go to the next step. Oh, one more thing before I go. See that red lettering, Nana Disai, Nalayeth Ainutruvan. I need to explain this word. He's talking about trade guilds, which were the most powerful enterprises in the Chola Empire. The king was the king, but who financed him? The trade guilds. This is Nana Desa Disai Nalayeth Ainutruvan. This is the name of one of the trade guilds. Ainutruvan means a body of 500 who traveled all directions for 4,000 directions. They called it 4,000 directions. So this was a very, very powerful trade guild. And I'll tell you, the descendants of this are the Chettiar, the bankers, the cement enterprises, who are very powerful within India now. They're very quiet people, but the descendants are still there, and it's a very nice enterprise. So this is one of the famous trade guilds which financed Rajaraja Chola's war enterprises. And did they do it for nothing? No. They said, you protect our ships from the pirates, we'll finance your war. They wanted the trade, so that's why they were able to go trade with China all across Southeast Asia. So this is just a name, and Kalki brings this out in one of the chapters in the book, and I'll talk about it later. Let's go to the next slide. Now we come to modern times. The context and times in which Kalki wrote his most famous novels. This is a picture of Madras, and I do need to read this disclaimer. The pictures I've used many are from the internet, and some are from books that I own. But we cannot copy these, it has copyright rights. Some of them I've paid for it. So just the usual disclaimer saying, just don't copy them or distribute them. Apart from that, Kalki wrote mostly in just around the times of independence. And what was the reason he wrote a lot? He had to give a positive push, a positive thinking to the people, because he had to tell them it's not the British. People were saying, what will happen to us if the British leave? The great kings, they knew the whole genealogy of King George and Edward and his affairs and what they did, and Queen Victoria's. They could name the grandchildren of Queen Victoria, but they had no clue who was Krishna Deva Raya. They had no clue who was Rajendra Chola. Nothing. Nobody even knew. One of the oldest functioning water dams across a river is the Grand Anaikat in Tamil Nadu. This was built by Karigala in the early part, like about, I think it was 680. It's still functioning, it's still working. I mean, it had to be refurbished, renovated quite often. But that Kalane still is there. And Kalki felt so bad. Nobody knew about this. But they talk about the Hoover Dam and this and that and everything. So he wanted to say, there's history in us. There's culture in that. So that was one of his writings. At this time, there was not only the turmoil of the independence movement, there were a lot of religious rivalries. I mean, democracy is not easy. Everybody has to say something. So 1 million people have 1 billion voices, and you have to hear it. So religious rivalry, caste, creed, language distinctions, and then the upcoming ethnic diversity, all these were creating a big ruckus, commotion, chaos. But he said, in spite of it, we are a great country, and he wanted to bring that out in his writings. One of the biggest problems for the southern states was they've never had a rule or a leader without a king. It was always a chieftain, a king sometimes. And now this democracy concept is coming through. How can we function without a king? That was the biggest. If you read the editorials in magazines and newspapers then, this will be utter ruin for us. How can we function without a king? No, that's not a point for us living in 2023. I mean, so what's the big deal? But at that time, they were not aware of a legitimate government functioning without a king or a chosen hereditary leader. So that was one of the things. In addition to this man-created chaos, nature was not kind. Tsunamis, storms, plagues, famines were common, and people suffered. So in that milieu, Kalki wanted to bring a positive light, and that's why he wrote many of this. Let's go to the, I have to talk about this picture. Those of you who are familiar with Chennai, this is the great Anna Salai or Mount Road of those days. The building with the facade, some of you book lovers will see that's still there. And do you know what that is? I know Devi recognizes it. Higginbotham's, okay? That bookstore is still there with the same name. They haven't changed it to some other Tamil name. It's still functioning bookstore. It's one of the greatest bookstores, and I loved it as a kid. I couldn't afford to buy them, but the smell of the books, to go read that, walk through the aisles of those books. That's fantastic. Anyway, and it's still there. Let's go to the next picture. Maybe we'll go back to the picture. I want to mention one more thing on this picture. If you look at that bus, do you see that the wording is there in Hindi, Urdu, English, and Tamil? So it was a all-encompassing, very welcoming region at that time. Now we have become more Tamil-oriented. Good thing, bad thing, I'm not the one to judge, but just wanted to point that out when we go to the next slide, because we are talking history. The best of Kalki, there are 3 novels, which he wrote many novels, many short stories, many literature pieces, essays, editorials, music and movie reviews, and humor pieces. He was famous for his wit and the writing style. But 3 biggest novels are Sivagami and Sabadam, which is more on Pallava history, and he talked more about the architecture of Kanchipuram and dance methods. Ponniyin Selvan will talk more about it, which is the Chola history and the greatness of Rajaraja and his eventual building of the great Tanjore temple. The book called Alai Ose is my favorite. It's a modernized, in more modern novel, going away from the historic Tamils. It's set during the period of partition and India's independence. It talks about the now Kali rights. It talks about the movement of people between present-day Pakistan and India, and what happened in the princely states in northern India. And it's a story of a Tamil family from the deep south, a village family, and how each member in that family got involved in the freedom movement. And the Gandhian principles, because Kalki was a great follower of Gandhi, that comes out in this book. If you ever want to teach independence history, of course we have Wikipedia, Google, everything. This is a great book. One of my ambitions was to translate this novel, but there have been other translations, particularly done by Kalki's granddaughter. I believe it was published last year. So there are English translations of Alai Ose. Alai Ose means the sound of ocean waves. So it talks about the turmoil of the period of independence India. So that's a great book. So what is the background of Kalki wrote for a magazine called Ananda Vigadan, which is interesting because the owner of that magazine was one Mr. Vasan. He later became a movie producer and more important. What he made money was he would publish crossword puzzles which people could fill up and send for a competition for 4 annas, which is a quarter of a rupee of those days, which was pretty pricey. But the prize was about 20 rupees, which was a great price. So he didn't have to expend. There were thousands of people filling up the crossword every week. So as long as he gave one prize, it was enough. Vasan made his money like that. After some point, he thought these bit papers with just the crossword puzzle was not enough. He had to pad it with some jokes or some stories, particularly movie reviews would sell it more. So he incorporated Kalki saying, come and write this. So he was a one-man magazine producer. That's how Ananda Vigadan started. The cover page was always a picture and a joke. Then there was a movie review and then 2 pages of these crossword puzzles which people could send back. So the magazine was to sell the crossword puzzle. That was his aim. And Kalki was his one-man show to make that magazine function. At some point, Kalki said, I don't like this. I mean, why are we making money out of this? Let's talk literature. And Vasan said, you have no business sense. This is what sells for me and this is what is making money. But they lived together for a while and Kalki, but then the other thing was Kalki was a very great fan of Gandhi and he was a volunteer. And when Gandhi had protest movements, he would call his volunteer cadre to say, go do this at this point. One of the things he did was, his cadre had to go stand in the middle of crosswords in a village or in a town, a small town, and talk sedition. That means talk independence, cry out against, and get arrested. Gandhi's main aim was get arrested so it gets publicity. Go to jail for 2-3 months, then you'll come out, then you can do your thing. So his cadre of one of the volunteers was Kalki. So he was asked to go to jail by Gandhi at that time. He just finished some of the major, like the Salt Satyagraha. And he told Vasan, I have to go to jail. Vasan said, no, who will run the magazine? He says, no, I'll come back in 3 months. He says, I can't afford to pay the fees because there was a fine against magazines if their employees were arrested for sedition. He says, I cannot pay your release money anymore. If you're going now, you and I are parting ways. So that's how Kalki parted ways with Anand Vigadan and Vasan. So in the jail, something good happened to him. He met Sadasivam, another follower of Gandhi. And many of you may know what was Sadasivam famous. MS's husband. So he married MS, who was a different caste, Devadasi caste. And he said, I'll marry her and bring her into my household. So Sadasivam was already married to MS. Kalki and Sadasivam became friends. And when Kalki Krishnamurti said, I don't have a job when I get out, what shall I do? He said, let's start a magazine. Warriors. We don't even have paper. We don't have a printing press. How do I start a magazine? Sadasivam said, don't worry, I'll do it. And he said, how do we have the money for this? My wife, she will act in movies and get you the money. So that's how MS acted in about a handful of movies. One of the most famous is Meera, but she acted in Narada as Narada in one of the movies, and that's how they made the money for the first edition of Kalki magazine. So MS financed that. Her name is there so you can know. And then they started the magazine. That magazine is still going on, it's still surviving because they keep reprinting Kalki stories. The two pictures there, Alayosa's cover page and Shivagavi and Sabadam, and there was a great revolutionary thought in Shivagavi and Sabadam. One thing, it talked about the monk, the Buddhist monk who fell in love with this dancer. There's a whole volume in that called Bhikshu in Kadal, his love for this dance. He loved the dance, and therefore the intricacies of the Pallava Chalukya war woven through this love of this monk. And then more importantly, he was the one who, according to Kalki's novel, talks about Ajanta and Ellora, World Heritage Sites of today. You want fresco paintings of ancient India, Ajanta. You want cave temples carved out of solid rock, Ellora. So that novel talks about not just Mamallai and Mamallapuram, it talks about Ajanta and Ellora. That's a whole different talk about details of that novel. And Alayos, I already told you, it's India's independence. Let's go on to the next slide. This picture, the black and white photo, is very important. The man on the furthest, my right and your left, is the artist called Ponniyin Subramaniam. He signed it off as Ponniyin, who drew the artwork for most of Kalki's works. The European gentleman's name is Ellis Duncan. It's not Duncan, but Duncan is an American from the Kentucky area of the USA. The fantastic thing about him was he produced Tamil movies in the early 30s, 40s, 50s. He did not know one word of Tamil and he would not learn it. He lived in Connemara Hotel, had a pet as a little tiger cub, but he produced the greatest movies and the greatest innovations in South Indian filmmaking he introduced. He introduced the trolley system, the system wherein he could rotate the camera so the people could be seen in 360 degrees. So he made fantastic movies, and Kalki was the biggest critic of him, saying he's bringing pornography to us. These fellows are ridiculous. Why are you going seeing his movies? Criticized and ripped him apart in his magazines. But when they needed a person to produce the movie Meera, who did Kalki go to? Ellis Duncan, because they knew that movie will sell and be popular. So Meera was a pan-Indian movie of those days, produced in many languages, dubbed even into Russian. For some reason it became popular in Russia. And he did that movie in Hindi, Tamil, Telugu. And one of the greatest movies, some of the most beautiful songs which are still sung are written by Kalki there. So Kalki is the man next to the American. The two young men are his nephews and cousins or someone who always traveled with him. So this is their travels to Ajanta to get information for his novels, and so Ponniyin could do the artwork. Maniam was obsessed with Ajanta style of painting, and he incorporated that in many of his artwork. There's two pictures here which I will introduce. See the bottom one, the palanquin. Any wedding invitation you see these days, you see this picture, right? The artwork was first done by Maniam. You can see his signature there. We don't even recognize him anymore. Anybody can copy this picture these days. The other picture is greatest novel or story of Sri Lankans. It's called Ashoka Mitra, and no, Ashoka Mala, and she fell in love with the prince, and there's a story. If you want to talk Sri Lanka, this is a story, Ashoka Mala story. So that was one of the front pieces he did. Those days magazines would have a cover page in color or a centerfold, because they couldn't afford to print everything in color, everything else was black and white, or this kind of sepia one color tint. So that was two of the most famous paintings of Maniam. Next picture. Okay, so more on Maniam. Look at him sitting in one of, I think it's Hampi, where he's doing the sketch work. His wife is sitting behind him in the hot sun with a flask of coffee and some food. And that's what he's doing right there. And he actually went to every place and sketched the artwork. So he didn't just draw something sitting in an office. He would go to the sites. Kalki said, go get a picture of Mamalai, go get a picture of this place. He had to go and travel. And it was real life depiction, which made the novel famous. This is one of the centerfolds in one of the Deepavali special issues, story of the Buddha, as depicted by Maniam. Next picture, please. Okay, Kalki's writing style, apart from this history, which I'll talk about later, was special. He wrote Tamil in a very easy, colloquial Tamil. And people criticized him, saying, you have ruined our language. This Kalki Tamil is rubbish. Like they criticize Madras Tamil these days, those days they criticized Kalki. You are not writing in the classical style. What nonsense is it that you're writing? What words are you using? He coined many words so that it would be easily understood by common man. There's a little paragraph of how when he came for his first job in a magazine called Navasakti, which was again a freedom movement emphasized magazine, he didn't even have a pen to write. The editor said, here's a neem twig, go get some nibs and keep it safe, because in this office all kinds of people walk in and out and you lose your pen. We have iPads, we have word processors, we have all that now. That's how Kalki started writing, and he could produce beautiful literature. Every word he wrote promoted a cultural pride and self-confidence, not only among the Tamils but the whole of southern India. And the pan-India, because of Gandhi, and he would even emphasize, let us learn Hindi, let's learn the North Indian languages, let's travel and understand. So everything he gave with a pinch of humor, so it was not critical. So people would understand humor. He would give it day-to-day references, so people loved it. Let's go on to the next slide. And we'll come back to some of these pictures if anyone has. The other biggest contribution of Kalki is contribution to Tamil music, not only classical but semi-classical and light music. He is what Rabindranath Tagore did for the Bengalis. I mean, you have Rabindra Sangeet these days, which is semi-classical. So Kalki's was some of the, and then he referenced some of the classics of Tamil, which I've listed, Puranaru, Nuru, Silappadigaram, Tirukkural. All these were first. Now we talk so much about Tamil pride, Dravidian pride. None of them knew about it or talked about it. It was Kalki who first said, here is a song from Silappadigaram. Here is a couplet from Tirukkural. Do you know the meaning of this? I'm writing it for you, understand it. And that is what he promoted in his magazine. This is the stuff on green highlight. Tamil could not be sung in the Tamil music, Chennai Music Academy, because they thought Tamil was a Katubirandi or a tribal language. The good language was Telugu, Sanskrit, sometimes Maratha, a little bit of Kannada. Even now, we haven't given up that affiliation, because Tyagaraja Utsavas, they emphasize either Telugu songs or Purandaradas Kannada songs. Tamil songs are not sung, but that was the status, because Nayakas ruled and Telugu was the language. The Marathas, for them, Marathi was the language, and they emphasized Sanskrit. So Tamil Isai Sangam would not allow, Tamil cannot be sung in Madras Music Academy, and M.S. Subbulakshmi was ostracized and not given allowed to sing in Madras Music Academy. People said, oh, because she's from a different caste, that was not the reason. But they said she cannot sing Tamil. So the rival people started in 1943 the Tamil Isai Sangam. Papanasam Sivan, M.L. Vasantakumari, all these people started singing in Tamil. And who wrote the lyrics? Sivan wrote the lyrics, Kalki wrote the lyrics, and they said they can sing. Even now, one of my most favorite songs, I've put it up there. It's some of you might have heard these songs who listen to Tamil music. Let's go on to the next one. And then many things were, why was this novel Ponniyin Selvan so popular? I mean, it's like a movement of people. It was very personal and relatable to day-to-day events. It talked about, people named their children after Nandini, Vananthi, Sivagami, and the evil or the villainous, not a true villainous. Nandini was more popular than Kundavi because Nandini is a name for so many children. In my class itself in college, there were 3 Nandinis. So you can just imagine that was a famous. The other thing, there are 2 pictures here. Of late, particularly in the 80s and 2000, it became a popular thing to arrange tours of Tamil Nadu to all the historical places, to travel and see through Kalki's writings. There's blogs, and these are one of the first group who wrote a blog on visiting the places mentioned in Kalki's novels. So this was, I had to get permission from them to use the picture. So the first group of women who went and visited places and made a blog and made it more popular, even before Mani Ratnam's movie came about. See the picture, that is Nandini with the sword. Look at her dress style, how modern it is. Those days, she popularized wearing a langa choli with a scarf around her shoulders. Can you imagine Tamil Nadu, so orthodox? Kalki introduced this saying, women can dress like this, women can do these things. He gave the empowerment for women through his novels. Sita in Alayosai is such a modern woman, you can't believe it. So those are novels that's there. And he wrote about actual places which people could visit, and he would encourage them, go see it. I'm not just telling you a story, go see this place. The other thing was, had politics, which reflected politics of those days. But in the historical context, history always repeats itself, so it was easy. And the biggest thing was murder mysteries are the most popular form of literature. Ponniyin Selvan has a murder mystery which has not yet been solved to this date. Aditya Karigala, the crown prince, was murdered brutally. Nobody knows who killed him. Kalki gave his own theory and his own twist in the novel. But historians have no clue because there's no reference material why he was killed, who killed him, what was the thing. We have terrorist groups, we have guerrilla warfare, we have conflict between cousins for power of the throne, and Rajaraja Chola was the first one to say, I will give up my throne for the peace of the land. You, my cousin, rule. In the Mahabharata, we don't have that. Dharmaraja didn't give up his throne to Duryodhana saying, let the people live in peace. But Rajaraja Chola did. He gave up his throne for his cousin who wanted the throne. So let's talk about the next thing. So a couple of pictures there. Here is a sculpture from Gangaikonda Chorapuram. It had a lot of scenes depicting warfare because Rajendra Chola conquered all of present-day Kalinga, Vanga, Odisha, all the way. They wanted to be able to take their ships up the Ganges so they can have trade posts. So war was his biggest thing, and this is the one of the ancestors of these kings was killed atop an elephant when the enemy king jumped up from his elephant and killed him. So he's called Yane Mel Tunjiya Devar. Yeah, Tunjiya means the person who was killed or died on top. So he died on his howdah in the elephant. So one of those wars, Takolampur, that's shown there. Why was this novel, I already said, the second reason it was popular was it went beyond Tagore and other Bengali literature. Those days, it was the fad to translate Bengali literature because Tagore won the Nobel. So everybody thought Bengali literature is Indian literature. They translated Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, everything. That padded all the Tamil books and magazines. Kalki started writing saying we are beyond the Bengalis, we can also write. The next one was everybody knew Three Musketeers, they knew Alexander Dumas, they knew all the Scottish novels, they knew all that. Nobody knew anything else because missionary schools taught those. And beyond that, they did not realize there was stories you could write, novels you could write. If at all you had anything in India, it was a religious, story of Murugan, story of Shiva, story of Ramayana. But beyond that, the social novels were not common except for the Bengali. So Kalki introduced that. And then the battlefields. Everybody knew about Waterloo, the world wars, this and that. Oh, Germans are occupying, Rommel's occupation of North Africa. They knew every detail of those battles, but nobody knew about Chebur. Nobody knew about Panipat. So he talked about Takkolam, Sripurambiam, Chebur, these great battles which changed the history of India. He talked about Ajanta Ellora in his novels and books and short stories, everything he introduced. And he told people, Tanjavur is in your backyard, go visit. Go see Tiruchi, the temple fortress is there. Go look at those and Tamil heroes beyond the Rama and the Krishna. There are Tamil heroes. Listen to Sangam poetry and look at the heroes. Silappathigaram, the greatest novel, it talks about how this woman, wronged by the king, burns down Madurai because they killed her husband erroneously and she seeks justice. So she's the Putrabai, even now worshipped almost as a goddess. And that was from a novel called Silappathigaram, the story of the antlet. So he talked about all that. Tirukural these days is so common. Every bus in Tamil Nadu has the couplet. We have classes even now here, Sri can say, we give prizes to the Tamil class students who can recite Tirukural. This was not known to the Tamils in the 50s. It was Kalki who started putting these couplets out, translating them into current day Tamil so people could understand. These are like, not proverbs, it's a two-liner giving something life lesson. And they are in about, how many verses? 3, I don't remember.
1330.
Yeah, 33. So there are that many couplets
1330.
dealing with lifestyle, war, love, householders, activities. So they are very, very beautiful. And we now run Tamil classes where children are asked to learn it and $1 for one couplet. So the child has to learn it, recite it in Tamil, give the English translation and if possible an example. Then they get a prize. So next slide please. How did Kalki get the reference material? One was, it was there carved in stone in every monument, every temple in Tamil Nadu. So you can see that carving here. One of the most popular carvings was how Rajaraja gave houses to 400 dancers and established a street of dancers. Without understanding, wow, he had 400 concubines is what the English wrote. But actually he promoted this culture among these people. These women and men were responsible to keep the temple clean, to make sure that there was art and culture presented at all events. You volunteers who work in this temple know how much effort it takes to keep the temple clean. So these families had the responsibility of cleaning up, cleaning the oil wicks, sweeping the courtyards, repainting the statues if it had to be, and then also providing the music and dance and cultural events during temple events. And he gave them a grant and a house to live in. So you don't have to depend on money from others, but you take care of this temple I have built. So, and that is carved. Which woman got which house, the door number of the house and the street. That street still exists, those houses are long gone. Those owners are not there, others own it. But that was all there in the Kalvettu. It talks about his wars, it talks about his family, his children. And there's miles and miles of such epigraphy there. The next one was, if you see that, it's a copper plate. These copper plates was written in copper plates, carved. It would start with English, then repeat in Tamil and later days in Telugu, strung together with copper wires and buried deep in the ground. So the history is never lost. They repeated it in stone, and just in case the stone is destroyed, they had copper plates. And some of these copper plates are in European universities, museums. One of the most famous is the Leiden Grant, wherein somebody gave land to a person in Anbil. And that whole history, in the first pages, it talks about Raja's lineage, his wars, how he conquered this land, that one. So those are the copper plates. The other one is the palm leaf manuscripts. Many of them are in the Tanjore Saraswati Mahal library, and they had a grant to rewrite these palm leaves every 10 years because the leaves deteriorated. Insects swallowed them, but they made sure they rewrote it. And when they rewrote it, of course you have mistakes because they are copied. So they did that every 10 years. It made a religious role to rewrite the palm leaves. And that was there till even the Sarpoji Maharajas took it as a religious duty to rewrite these palm leaves. They're wrapped in silk and stored. The Saraswati Mahal library is now being digitized so we don't lose those old texts. But there is that library, and fortunately the Tamil Nadu government has the grants to take care of that very, very ancient library. Now you may wonder why I put that trunk, the blue trunk. Kalki had a blue trunk under his table in his office where he stored his reference material. No Wikipedia, no Google, no go-to library. We have a fantastic main library where I want something, we can go, or they can even bring it from other libraries and universities. He didn't have that. His only connection was with the Madras University Library and personal friendships and letter writing to people all over India. Let's go to the next slide. These were the two greatest epigraphists who deciphered these carvings on stone and published them. Each kalvettu or each panel was copied, rewritten in local Tamil and then in English, and the explanation written down. At that point, in the 1950s, only about 30% of those stone carvings in some temples was deciphered. Fortunately or unfortunately, even now, only 50% have been decoded. We still have a lot of work for archaeologists. If your children want to be archaeological students and doing Tamil Kalvettu, there's a lot of jobs. Who are these two people? Holz was a German origin German. He was the epigraphist or the dean in the Madras University of those days to run the story. Of course, they wouldn't give it to a blackie, so it has to be a white man to lead the department. Though most of the work was done by Venkaya, who later, after he moved out, after Holz went back to Germany, Venkaya was given the post, but with great opposition from the local colonials, saying, how can you put a blackie as the dean of this archaeological division? But he was a Kannada origin person. He deciphered not only Tamil inscriptions, but a lot of the Kannada and Telugu inscriptions. And he revealed that the great temple in Tanjore, everybody thought it was Karigala who built it, because the Karigala Grand Anaikat, remember the dam across the Kaveri I talked about? There were inscriptions there which said it's Karigala built it. So the British said everything in that area was built by Karigala. Nobody even knew about Rajaraja Chola. So he was the first one who revealed, let's get all this vegetation cleared from this big monument. Let's start lighting the lamp at the shrine again. And then he started deciphering a lot of that Kalvettu. So we should, and we still have Venkaya lectures, and if you're interested, YouTube has some of those lectures who get the Venkaya award, so it's beautiful. Let's look at the next slide. Here is the picture of some of Maniam's drawing. At the top is Mamalai and Ajanta Ellora and some of Mamalai. And that's the picture he wrote about the dancers called Tivagami and her father, Ayana, whose obsession was to get the secret of how these frescoes in Ajanta remained unfading. How was the colors maintained? He wanted to know that because he wanted to do it. And that is the story how the whole Sivagami in Sabadam starts. His obsession with that paint, how was that fresco paint developed? You remember the girl with the pearl earring, if any of you read that? One of the obsession was how did he get that sheen, how did he get that blue? Because painters and artists had a tough time getting correct paints. In the Ajanta paints are frescoes which are still unfading. And Ayanar was obsessed with that, and so he reveals the secret of getting into the fort of Kanchi to the enemy. Because that enemy promised, I'll teach you the secret of Ajanta paint. The whole story, I mean, that's a fiction that Kalki wrote, but that's the story. Let's go into the next screen, and we are almost to the end. Places, which Kalki wrote and told people. The top one is the Veeranam Lake, which plays a very important part in the Ponniyin Selvan novel. Some of you who watched the new Mani Ratna movie, there's a little bit of depiction of this lake. This is the water body that still supplies water to Metro Chennai of these days. It's a beautiful picnic spot. I've been there. Fortunately, the government does maintain it clean. There are roadways, picnic spots. Fantastic. Kalki describes it. It's like an ocean with 79 canals which feed the watershed. So what's the importance of the canals? I'll talk in a minute. That little brick structure, the tsunami of 2000, the big one, destroyed it quite a bit. This was the lighthouse tower about which Kalki talks in the Ponniyin Selvan novel. One of the main characters tries to commit suicide from there. Then there's a story revolved around that and the heritage of that area and how it was maintained. And there's a temple there, and that temple still exists the same way he described it. Unfortunately, Ponniyin Selvan fans started taking away bricks to keep. What would they do with it? Finally, the Tamil Nadu government went and put a fence around it and put some guards. But unfortunately, the tsunami did half the havoc, and Ponniyin Selvan fans did the rest of the havoc. Let's go to the next picture. There's a map. It became a fashion to trace the journeys of Vandidevan, one of the heroes on Ponniyin Selvan novel. And he talks about it took him 4 days to come from Kanchi to this Viranam lake, the lake we talked about. And he describes the whole story of that travel. People now do, how long does it take to walk? How long will it take if I come by car? And so these are Google Maps and traces, and a lot of people do these kind of things. So there are groups which do every leg of his journey, every spot he visited. One of the biggest spots they talk about is Tirupurambiyam, that's the word in Tamil. It's a war memorial, and there's a lot of terrorist conspiracies taking place in that. Those days itself it was dilapidated. That's what Kalki wrote. It's still like this, even now, nobody has done anything with it. Tirupurambiyam Pallipadai, that means the war memorial, where you have, even now, even today, terrorists gather there. It's not a very conducive or socially acceptable area, and people are now taking an effort, let's clear it up and make it a tourist spot. So then the other one is, a lot of temples in Tamil Nadu will have inscriptions saying who gave them grants, and one of the greatest grant givers was Kundavai. And in that they have translated into modern Tamil, Kundavai Pirati, the elder sister of Rajaraja Chola, who gave the grant to maintain this temple, to get oil for the lamps, ghee for the lamps, and her husband was Vallavarayan Mandivadevan, the Chalukya prince. Okay, so, and then that they also write, this town was named Rajarajapuram, but it in times changed and it now became Dadapuram. Instead of Raja, it became Dadapuram. So there are epigraphic evidence all over Tamil Nadu to show what she did. Kundavai was a great grant giver. She did one thing which was new in those days. She established infirmaries and gave grants for doctors. She saw these men fighting the wars, coming back without limbs and with nose cut off and wounds that were not healing. So her primary job was to get healing for these men and give them another job so they could survive even though they lost a limb or they were unable or they're unfunctional. The women took care of the planting and the harvesting, but the men now became weavers. So even now, weaving is a very important occupation in Tamil Nadu. The whole community is called Vellala community, and they are still a powerful vote bloc for the Dravidians. They play them against each other even today. So these weavers were encouraged as to learn a new trade because of Kundavai's grants. Let's go to the next screen. Introduction of poetry in Kalki's works. Every chapter, every other chapter will introduce not some modern poetry, but he would reference some of the old literature. Kundavai and her friends are on a boat trip. That boat trip picture was immortalized by one of the newer Telugu movies which became very popular. What was it? Bahubali, I think. They show that, the swan-shaped boat and that. But that comes from Maniyam's drawing, and there's some evidence to show that the Telugu producer was a fan of Maniyam's drawings and he took those artwork. So she sings a song from Silapadigaram. Then he'll write a footnote saying, this is from this verse in Silapadigaram, go read that, which would encourage the youngsters go read Silapadigaram. Folk dances, those who saw the movie, one of the biggest hit songs was Devara Natam. which had tones of Balinese dance and the monkey dance. That was described in Kalki's novel as saying the folk dances and the terrifying dances of Kali, the goddess who wants to give sacrifices of human beings. And in that, Kundavai says, I will go to the Kali temple when the elders say, no, youngsters can't go see this, it's terrible. But she says, who can stop me, I will go see. So those kind of things he talked about it. In The Astrologer of Kudandai, which is totally not there in Mani Ratnam's movie, he was the spy who worked for Kundavai, and he spouts Sangam poetry, he talks about poetry. When Vandiyadevan, the hero, enters Parayare, he is a masked dancer because he is being chased by others and he has to enter the city secretly because the guards would stop him. And that again is portrayed. So let's go on to the next picture. These are some of the drawings which I love because Ponniyin was played with light and dark. You can see Nandini in the night with the light shining on her face in the bottom. The ship in a storm, which plays a big part in the novel. Alvaradian trying to jump over the fortress walls again in the night. How did he do it? Remember then they had only block printing. Each block had to be hand-carved from the drawing of the artist and then keep it. These are artisans whom we have forgotten. So some of the best pictures, my best reasons why this novel was loved is because of this old artwork. Next picture. Some more of the same artwork. Some of these scenes you will see in the modern day movie. Next one. Women in Kalki's creations were very powerful, and that was so novel in those 1950s. He died soon in the middle 50s. Here is Nandini seducing one of the young men because she wants him to carry a letter to her lover. And so she plays him. It was unbelievable they could play a woman in that role. You talk about Sita, the devout to Rama and that kind of story, but he made Nandini the heroine and he said women can have emotions like this. Women can be conniving, women can do this. And he did that. And there is Kundavai crying because the man she loves is thrown in jail for killing her brother. And she has nothing, she was the most powerful princess, but she couldn't do a thing. So there's a picture of that. Let's go on to the next one. This is what made me, my friend said, Indra Mami, you have to come see the movie, and I was not interested. There's some backstory to it. But the top picture is a Malayali actress who played the role of Poogurilli. I think they cut many of her scenes. She appears for like 10 minutes in the movie or something. But see the picture of Ponniyin versus what Mani Ratnam did. When I saw that promotional picture, I said, okay, it may be all right, that movie, I'll go see the movie. And my friend Manju bought the tickets for me to go see the movie, insisted I have to see the movie. And I did enjoy the movie. It was different from the novel, but still a very enjoyable movie. The first part was true to the story of Kalki. The second part is Mani Ratnam's version, nothing to do with the novel. So if you want to know the story of what Kalki wrote, read the novel in Tamil or my English translation. Let's go to the twists and turns of one character, Mandakini Devi, played by Aishwarya Rai, the mother of Aishwarya Rai in the movie. Totally cut off. Nobody, that is not even referenced in the movie, which I think is a pity because those twists and turns is what made the novel, the mystery of the novel, very interesting. So the movie delved into an ordinary romantic story, which was not good in the second part. Next, this one is a picture where what made the Cholas, and the Kalki novel in the fourth part he talks about this. The ship's captain has been attacked by Arab pirates and he's dying. Rajaraja finds him in the forest and he says, this happens to my captain, my ship, my Chola ship. It cannot be done. I swear that I will rid the ocean of pirates. That's why he went and conquered Sri Vijaya. That's why the Chola influence went to the Sri Vijaya Empire, and we have Angkor Wat, the great city now, the Tamil Empire. That is why even now the Balinese, Filipino names, you'll see reflections. Many of them have the Bharatanatyam, which is so akin to Bharatanatyam of India, is still there. That's one scene Kalki talks in detail. This cannot happen to my men, that they be ravaged by pirates and my ship sunk by the pirates. So he swears, for your life, I cannot save your life, but I swear I will rid the seas of pirates. And that's what one of his ambitions he talked. The other one is, he's hiding in a Buddhist monastery because of other reasons. And his sister comes in secret to see him and say, stay in the monastery, don't come out because the country is in turmoil, there are terrorists everywhere. I don't know how to safeguard your brother. At least you be safe. And he says, Akka, you're telling me to be hiding. I want to build monuments. Did you know how tall the Buddha statues in Sri Lanka are? We worship this little Nandi and little Shivalinga. I want to build something that scrapes the sky. I want this Nandi to grow and touch the sky. And then she says, you're a dreamer, I'm a dreamer. I'm dreaming of conquest of lands. You're dreaming about skyscrapers. We are both idiots. That's how that chapter ends. So those are two very important chapters Kalki introduces of what to come. Next, please. Okay, why is the back book cover has my husband? He is my greatest friend, my companion who encourages me. Without him, I'm nowhere. If I have a greatest fan, it's Neil, my husband. So I wanted him, and everybody said, why are you putting him? Did he write the story? No, he was the inspiration for me to do the translation. The blue cover is the second part of my English translation. And Raja built many temples, including our own temple. If you have a moment, go look at our pillars. See his name there? Raja Chola is there in our temple pillars. Devi, you know how we did the pillars of the temple project. Some of the trustees know that Krishna's here, Varani is here. So Raja Chola is one of the pillars of our temple. Go look at that pillar. Thank you, folks. Any questions? I know I took a little longer than expected.
Very interesting lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Very,
Devi.
very
It's very fitting for today's Sakashashti.
I thank the Cultural Center and the temple for asking me to come and speak. It's a pleasure. Thank you. And I thank you all from the Zafran and the library.
If you can be seated 1 second. On behalf of the Ganesha Temple and the Indian Cultural Center, we would like to honor Mami for this wonderful talk. Thank you, Mami. Thank you, everyone.